It's amazing how something as simple as the changing of a verb tense can elicit such powerful emotion within all of us. Over the past 12 to 18 hours, really from last evening into this morning, that is emotion that has gripped so many of us whenever the idea of Black Sabbath changed from Black Sabbath are an English heavy metal band to Black Sabbath were an English heavy metal band. Black Sabbath last night performed their final concert of a 50-year career in Birmingham, and it was a show that was outlined by celebration. It was one that Ozzy said he felt great being there, and at the end, whenever the bow was taken, it was one that definitely was a bit understated. It was not extreme. It was not one where the band was trying to soak in the spotlight, but instead, it resonated very much like a band that had undertaken this journey, decided to do one final great tour for their fans before finally riding off into the sunset, and just felt so very happy to be back where it all began, almost as though the entire story of 50 years, of half a decade, was actually circular and had finally reached that 12 o'clock portion on the other side of the clock. This is a band that so many people have chronicled as the godfathers of heavy metal, the most important group within heavy metal's history, really the founding father, and the one that really has influenced so many bands that have come after them. In fact, they did so even whenever heavy metal wasn't even a fully quote-unquote established musical genre, or at least one that didn't have quite the same power or resonance as it does today. Of course, that wouldn't come for another 10 years or so, and it would be based around a Judas Priest album. However, whenever you trace back heavy metal's history, Black Sabbath always feels like the logical starting point. They feel like the band that really explored that darkness, that territory, with a little bit of a blues edge at times, in order to really chronicle a side of music that previously had remained largely unexplored, or at least unexplored in the way in which it was represented musically. This group, over its 50-year history, was able to release numerous albums, and it was one that wasn't always with the most steady of lineups. There were multiple different lead singers, with Ozzy Osbourne, of course, being the most famous, and of course, the Ronnie James Dio era of the early 1980s probably posing as second best. However, there are albums through each decade that really show to be very important to Black Sabbath's chronology. Heaven and Hell is often cited as one of the greater albums within their discography, or really within heavy metal history, and that featured Ronnie James Dio. While albums such as Cross Purposes, that didn't even include one of those two, seemingly essential singers, featuring instead Tony Martin, is a personal favorite of mine. I just love the way in which that album feels. It's one that has a lot of power and emotion behind it. Tony Iommi is considered to be the Lord of the Riff, somebody who has literally influenced thousands to perhaps tens of thousands of people to pick up a guitar, learn how to play it, and want to be a riff and music creator based off of what he was able to accomplish on such simple licks heard on songs such as Paranoid or even War Pigs. This group has been able to deliver endless memories, and that's part of their mystique, part of their culture, part of the reason why Black Sabbath will always be considered by metal fans to be one of the, if not the most important heavy metal band on the planet. Not only because of the inception really coming from their very genes, but also based off of the real story that they've been able to tell. The fact that their membership has been able to be seen as elite throughout the whole of their career, that Ozzy Osbourne's solo career was seen as equally as important considering the material that he was able to give us, the fact that it was able to branch out and give us brand new superstars such as Zakk Wylde or, for a time, Randy Rhoads, is one that only furthers the legend. The fact that Tony Iommi has worked with such a vast number of individuals, from Pepper Keenan to members of Venom such as Kronos, either that or Dave Grohl in the alternative rock departments. The fact that these guys have continuously, Black Sabbath, been a great representative and really a true and great administrator of the heavy metal universe. Really an ambassador for this genre that we love, this genre that we are really obsessed with, something that has given us so many memories. It can literally be traced back all the way to these guys, and even further back as well, with proto-metal and some of the initial signposts that hinted at what was perhaps to come, the John the Baptist to the Jesus Christ. That was Black Sabbath. Over a 50-year career, one of my most powerful memories of Black Sabbath was getting to see them live, first of all, which was at an Ozfest in the mid-2000s. And though it was before their return to studio form with the album 13 in early 2013, this was a show that was marked by the fact that right near the end, with very few songs remaining, the skies began to clap with thunder and showcase brilliant lightning, and then they opened up and poured down on the arena below it. Those that were up in the grass, that were unshielded by the pavilion that was in front, that was shielding the band, got soaked, drenched, started running for cover. But meanwhile, those of us under the pavilion bore witness to something that felt larger than life itself. It felt like Black Sabbath was commanding the very heavens that surrounded the area in which they were performing that night in Burgettstown, Pennsylvania. That's the power that Black Sabbath has had for so many individuals. That is the reason why, on the day in which we should be mourning, and many of us are, we in fact should be thankful. We should be thankful that we got the experience of Black Sabbath. We should be thankful that they have been able to give us so many gifts, perhaps without even realizing what their music was about to deliver to the world. Black Sabbath can easily be seen as one of the most important heavy metal bands on the planet. But for all of us, losing this band, it doesn't hurt maybe nearly as bad as losing Dio or Lemmy, principally because they're all still among us. They all still walk and talk. We didn't lose Tony Iommi to cancer. Instead, they're walking away the way that most people should be able to walk away, by their own decision, by their own power, and walk into the night thinking about what project really is next for them in their life, as opposed to it all coming down to a crashing halt. Black Sabbath, we thank you endlessly for the albums, for the memories, for the music. We thank you for what you have done for this genre. Whether you decide to come back for a couple of one-off shows, put out the odd record, or really just release a song just for kicks, we'll be there to support you as metal fans, principally because, at this point, you've given us everything that you can. If you give us anything in addition, that's just considered a bonus. Thanks for everything, and really thanks for heavy metal. Thanks for delivering us a genre that we are now so just recklessly obsessed with, something that occupies our minds frequently, if not eternally. You are the reason. And thank you once again for all of the memories.